Hello, this is UATV. My name is Henry Keane. What we do here is we debunk Russian lies with Ukrainian truth for all our global sake. Join us and help Ukraine by watching and sharing this very episode. Welcome to the News Polls. Russian warships hide in the sea as Ukraine hits their naval bases on the peninsula of Crimea. Ukrainian invention, a modernized drone capable of acting in swarms. And Vladimir Putin, Russian dictator, shows his cringe emperor-style apartment in the Kremlin. Learn what for. A little sea walk. On May 2nd, Russia sends 15 warships into the Black Sea area. The first time out in weeks. Ukraine's Navy said the ships could carry over 30 caliber missiles, but this doesn't mean an attack on Ukraine was inevitable. Earlier, right after two Russian ships went to sea at night, observers guessed that Russia might be trying to protect its ships from possible attacks. More ships gathered later, and Crimean media finally decide the peninsula was attacked that very night. And they were right. Explosions were heard near Russian air bases in Batyar and Novofedorovka. Air raid alerts were sounded several times after midnight. Russia's defense ministry said its air defense shot down as many as 121 drones, 89 over Crimea and 23 over the Black Sea. There was also a strike on the Zvezda space intelligence center in Russia's Stavropol region. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukrainians' Anti-Disinformation Center, said this place is a key part of Russia's espionage system of space spying, obviously, and waging digital and informational warfare.
It's not just a technical base. It's part of Russia's strategy to watch war zones and spread propaganda. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Disinformation Center.
Ukraine's 15th Artillery Recon Unit showed a video where they hit a Russian BUK-M3 air defense system. Russian troops tried to hide it after spotting Ukrainian drones, but just didn't help. It was still hit and then exploded. The BUK-M3 is a medium-range anti-air system and costs about $45 million. On May 1st, Russian drones attacked the city of Zaporizhzhia. At least 10 deadly strikes caused multiple fires and severe damage. 27 residential buildings, 11 private houses, 5 schools, garage buildings, cars and trucks were damaged. A university building was also targeted and was damaged. People were hurt. Burns, cuts, broken bones. 29 people were injured, including a 13-year-old boy. By morning, 20 people are still in hospital, 2 in serious condition. Ukrainian Railways Ukrzaliznytsia said the Zaporizhzhia train repair plant was also hit, but all workers were in shelter and are unharmed. Constant shelling, Russian drones and bad weather just could not stop brave evac teams. Every day, volunteers risk their own lives to evacuate people from front lines in Ukraine, taking them to safer places. Our reporters join one of these missions in the Kherson region for you.
It's early morning, and outside the window, an unexpected April snowfall covers the ground. But the weather is actually helpful. The snow conceals the car from Russian aerial surveillance. Together with a group of volunteers, we're heading to a frontline village to evacuate civilians.
Едешь как последний раз.
You drive like it might be your last time. Honestly, going there, it could be a one-way trip. We got up at 1 a.m. and left at 2:30 for Shiroka Balka. There, we picked up a woman who had a stroke, another family we evacuated from right by the river, where Russian soldiers are camped out on the other side.
Before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Maxim worked as a courier. He joined the volunteer team nearly 6 months ago and now evacuates people from the most dangerous parts of western Kherson Oblast. In addition to constant shelling, there's the threat of anti-personnel mines, known as leaf mine, and Russian drones that often monitor the roads.
Был скид, и вот это получается.
There was a strike. Here's the damage. We were lucky the windshield was armored. If it hadn't been, things could have turned out much worse. As soon as we drive in, they lock onto the vehicle. What's there to fly across the river? Take them 5 minutes at most, and they're on our side with FPV drones, Mavics, and everything else.
Today, the evacuation team is headed to Opulence, a small village frequently shelled by Russian forces. There, 84-year-old Halina Ivanovna is waiting. She moved to Inhulets 2 years ago from the village of Poniativka, fleeing earlier bombardments. Now she's being forced to flee once again.
There are no houses left. People live in cellars. There are around 20 people left. They bring them bread and water. Those who stay, if they step out of the basement, there are drones overhead. And then they started using phosphorus bombs. Now it's constant shelling. We live just above the Dnipro River, and the Russians are on the opposite bank. I didn't want to leave, but my daughter insisted. She's my only child, and I have one grandson. I was born in 1941. I was 5 during World War II. I still remember it. The Germans gave us candy, chocolate. Then I lived through 3 famines. I went to school with nothing to wear. My father fought in the war. That's the life I've lived. And to think, this is what it's come to. Already at the entrance to Kherson, the drone detector gives a signal. There is a drone above the car.
Already at the entrance to Kherson, the drone detector gives a signal. There is a drone above the car. Maxim turns on the REB and adds speed. The drone manages to get away. The next stop, a humanitarian hub, where Halina Ivanovna will rest before continuing her journey. The team, however, heads out again almost immediately.
Put the leg in and that's it.
Svitlana Dmitrievna was evacuated just a few days earlier from the village of Kamyshany. In Kherson, she's been under medical supervision and receiving the treatment she needs.
You absolutely must evacuate, Valya. Everything was destroyed. 3 shells hit, wiped everything out. I had no choice but to leave. It's unbearable. Day and night. You wouldn't believe what's flying through the sky. I don't even know how I survived.
With both women now on board, the team sets course for Odessa, where temporary housing is already prepared for them. Others from frontline villages have also found shelter here. One of them is Irina, who was evacuated from Antonivka with her husband, who has limited mobility.
Ми сюди приїхали 31 грудня.
We arrived on December 31st. It was New Year's Eve, but they still met us, fed us, and took care of everything. The people here are incredibly kind, supportive, and helpful, even with medical needs. We have everything we need. Don't be afraid. Come. You'll be welcomed with open arms.
The center also helps with paperwork, job searches, and securing permanent housing. Leaving home and fleeing from a war zone doesn't mean being left to face everything alone. Every evacuation is a story of its own. What matters most is having the courage to leave and save your life. Reported by Valery Bakus, Daria Litovchenko from Kherson region, UATV News.
The Baltics have been eager to help Ukraine with military and non-military aid ever since 2022 particularly, and fearing direct Russian military aggression, the Baltic states are gathering their own military capabilities, of course. With the first 6 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, long-range MLRS systems, already arrived in Estonia. HIMARS rocket systems have proven themselves perfectly well in Ukraine on the front lines, just as well. It was HIMARS units of Ukrainian artillery who destroyed various important military targets of the Russian invaders, including air defense facilities, and command centers, and crossings, you name it. Thanks to the pre-delivery training, the Estonian defense forces will be ready to use these rocket systems immediately, right away. Procuring these 6 military machines from the United States is one of Estonia's largest arms orders so far. And more to the topic. Another groundbreaking weapon that Ukraine successfully invented and manages to operate on the front lines are a wide range of combat drones. The most recent development being a Batyar S, which resembles the Russian-Iranian Shahid drone. While the Russian drone is vulnerable to electronic warfare and has a petrol-running engine, the detailed characteristics of the Ukrainian drones are not a secret now. It's not known. But the most important message for Russia, here it is. This is a game for 2, and we are likely to see Ukrainian drones swarming over Russian military objects each and every night, just as the Russian drones now fly in hundreds over Ukraine. The footage shows the drone being launched from a mobile launcher. The device has a characteristic shape of the fuselage and wing similar to the Shahid drone, but According to the developers, Batyar S is a completely domestic development in Ukraine adapted to the conditions of the front line and the very needs of our armed forces. Iran's Shahed 136, developed by and first unveiled in 2020, has become widely known due to its mass use. This drone, carrying a 30 to 50 kg warhead, has a range of up to 2,000 kilometers, and its low cost, relatively about $50,000 per unit, and simplicity of design have made it an effective tool for infrastructure attacks against Ukraine for years now. Although the exact characteristics, as I said, of the Batyar have not yet been disclosed, the experts speculate that it could be lighter and faster than the Shahed 136, with an emphasis on stealth and accuracy. And returning to our Baltic allies, many fear that Russia will try NATO out with a blitzkrieg against 3 Baltic countries, and nobody really knows what happens then. But there are at least 2 countries, as we all know, in the alliance that oppose any conflict with Russia whatsoever. That's right, Hungary and Slovakia. In regards to Baltic states' Ukrainian experience, American HIMARS and Ukrainian strike drones will surely make the Baltic states feel much more secure when facing Russian threat, which won't vanish in thin air anytime soon. A recent statement made by the White House that United States, I quote, won't fly all over the world, end of quote, to make Russia and Ukraine sign peace. And many consider the statement to proclaim that America could be just leaving the negotiation process.
We're not going to be intermediaries. We are not going to fly to the other side of the world at a moment's notice to moderate meetings. Now the work has to be done between the 2 sides. Tammy Bruce, White House spokesperson, during a press briefing.
But it's not quite true. The minerals deal has been signed after long weeks of negotiations, and now it's Washington's turn to announce, hey, the ball is on your court. Now you, Ukraine and Russia, try to negotiate between yourselves and trade peace. This is not a declaration of leaving the peace process, no, as after that, Vice President Vance made another explanatory statement saying the war not going to end anytime soon. Of course, Ukrainians are angry that they were invaded, but are we going to continue to lose thousands of soldiers over a few miles of territory this or that way? J.D. Vance stated. Well, I don't know, maybe we should ask Putin about that. But the United States seems to have chosen a way to get Russian and Ukrainian representatives actually together, finally, in one room for negotiations. But let's see, we shall see, as both Ukraine stands against direct negotiations with the killers of civilians. And the Kremlin leadership also declares non-recognition of Ukraine's top leadership. So here's how Secretary of State Rubio voices the position of Washington.
I think we know where Ukraine is, and we know where Russia is right now, where Putin is. They're still far apart. They're closer, but they're still far apart. And it's going to take a real breakthrough here very soon to make this possible, or I think the president is going to have to make a decision about how much more time we're going to dedicate to this. Marco Rubio, United States Secretary of State, in an interview for Fox News.
European officials are also concerned about the consequences of the US potentially allowing its companies to resume economic cooperation with Russia already, right now, while European businesses are still not allowed to do so. Even the 17th package of sanctions against Russia is being prepared now in Europe. Kaja Kallas, the chief diplomat of the European Union, said there was a plan B to maintain economic pressure on Russia, even if Hungary blocked the decision of EU economic sanctions in July. But she stressed that Brussels was still focused on keeping all member states in agreement. Kallas acknowledged that there are discussions in some of the capitals in Europe about whether to follow the Trump administration's views. An example, if it abandons Ukraine and restores relations with Russia. And we might even guess that those countries by names, looking at previous vetoes for sanctions and Ukraine in the European Union. Now let us all have a minute off the politics and off the war and just have a closer look into the modest, simple and natural life of a Russian dictator. Vladimir Putin opens the doors to his apartment in the Kremlin for you. Well, who needs luxury if there's no one who can actually appreciate its scope, right? And the scope is huge. Here, Vladimir Putin gives us a tour of his luxurious Kremlin apartment, and to me, it's just a maniac's lair. I'll show you, you just can Google more on your own if you want to, but I'm done with it. I'm not going to show the whole thing. It makes my eyes bleed. It comes with gilded walls, golden chandeliers and grand piano, you'll see it, and all the post-imperialist cringe that you can imagine, including them paintings of past Russian emperors looking at Vladimir Putin approvingly from the walls. Well, sure, absolutely. Every president of every country has a fine apartment and official palace where they stay and they work and they live, but there's a huge but. Not every president stays a president for 30 years in a row, right? That is the whole idea behind democracy, its core principle, the change of power, its interchangeability. Power stays, people go. You only personify power for a limited period of time. As power corrupts people, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Corrupts just like this. But all good, all these enormous palaces, they're symbols. Exactly that behavior was expected from Vladimir Putin. This is exactly how a poor proletarian and a KGB midget would have behaved when finally gets to absolute power and money and gives it a vent. Here comes palaces, Kremlin apartments, super yachts, islands, mountains of money, it never ends. Putin owns Russia, but it is not enough. He wants Ukraine. He wants Europe. Whole world, if he can, give him that, and it is still not enough, because it's never enough. Putin owns not only the Kremlin and all its apartments, he owns Russians. The people, the nation belongs to him, literally. Whatever he does never results in anything even close to national revolt against his oppressive rule, against the owner of this $1 billion palace, while 20% of Russians live in actual poverty. And Putin, as every dictator, is afraid of them. Afraid of his own people. He's afraid of them that sends a young Russian girl to jail for 24 years only for reading Ukrainian poetry. Well, this is why we fight him and his army. Well, Putin owns Russia. There's a black hole inside his chest that he always wants more. Give him a solar system. He wants that too. Give him a universe that is 13.8 billion light years across. He wants that all. Why? Well, nobody knows. Even himself. As he surely has way more money that he could ever spend in like next 10 lives. But here's one fine fact about Putin and actually all other dictators of the world. All their wealth, they always measure in dollars and euro, not their own domestic currency. I wonder, why is that? That's all, folks. Thank you so very much for watching this video. It was UATV News Pulse. Please share and subscribe. More truth to come. Stay tuned. Goodbye.